Hey everybody, welcome back to Q-Tips. We are the Video Store Junkies, and we're here to bring you a few selections to watch over the weekend on streaming. We're going to jump right into it, and I will pass this over to Bill.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I've got a movie. This is a movie I loved when I was a kid, watching it on Creature Features and Chiller Theater from 1959, which really I think was maybe the best year for movies ever. I keep running into movies from 1959. And unlike a lot of those movies, this one has not disappeared. You can find it on Prime, on Paramount. Of course, you can find it on Tubi. You can even find it on Plex because these folks know a classic. It's 1959's The Manster. That's right, The Manster. What a title. Half man, half monster, all terror. This is just the greatest thing ever. It's a super low budget, but really well filmed, kind of film noir, high contrast, black and white. Oh, you can also watch it in color, a colorized version on YouTube. If you're history's greatest monster, so watch it in black and white the way God intended it to be. And it's about this guy in post-war Japan, a hard-bitten, hard-drinking newspaper reporter, and he somehow falls under the clutches of a mad Japanese scientist who injects him with this fluid in his shoulder, and everything goes straight to hell. He starts an affair with a beautiful Amerasian woman, and he starts kind of getting a little itchy and homicidally and everything. And then things take a really terrible turn when an eye starts growing in his shoulder, followed by a head. It's amazing. Yes, he walks around with this coconut head on his shoulder, which I really think was carved from a coconut. Sometimes it moves a little bit, and it makes him crazy, as you would expect. I'm not saying this is the greatest movie ever because you haven't given me a chance to say it. I'll say it now. It's the greatest movie ever. I absolutely love this thing. It's lean and mean. It starts with a scream and a splash of blood against the wall. It's got a half man, half yeti running around killing people. At some point, they pull themselves apart and start fighting each other, which is just insane-o nuts. Oh, did I mention it all takes place at a volcano? Because of course it does. Why wouldn't it take place at a volcano? They just don't make them like this anymore. This odd little movie directed by Kenneth Crane, who cast his wife and did just a couple other movies. It's inexplicable. This is on the bottom half of a lot of movies. Like my favorite, all-time favorite horror movie is Eyes Without a Face, which is a beautiful French film of absolute gorgeous poetic horror, filmed by a genius, and they put it with The Manster because why not? And actually, the more I think about it, a perfect combination of films. Everything that there is about I love about horror is in these two extreme films here. So watch it. I guarantee you won't forget it. Of course, this has been referenced a million times. Sam Raimi, like myself, must have had this on autopilot, just running it all the time because he's referenced it in Army of Darkness. It's just great. The Manster. Just watch it. I promise you will not be disappointed. And I will throw this to a woman who's half beautiful woman and the other half beautiful woman, but not the same woman. So it's kind of creepy. Renee.
I thought you were sending it to me. By that description.
Right. Yep.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness. So my first suggestion is a delightful movie, which is fun and strange and oddly sentimental. This movie is about a young lady who is going through some things, and she decides to reach out to her biological father. And this is a guy who didn't even realize that he had a kid. And they meet up for the first time in a park, and they witness something that is just so bizarre and moderately troubling. And it essentially brings them together, and they have to work together to get through this. And this movie is called Chompy and the Girls. And and
Yay!
it's a lot it's a lot more bizarre than I can really explain, but it's very goofy, it's very fun, and I think if I had any request, it would be to just not watch the trailer, just
Mm.
just jump right into it. And you can watch that on Tubi and Roku and Hoopla. And again, it's called Chompy and the Girl. And I will now pass this over to Paul.
Why, thank you, Renee. And I'm going to second that.
Of course.
It is. It's like you said. It's strangely has a strange amount of heart to it. So it's really good. Well, my film has heart. Well, not really heart, but blood. It's got blood.
Hmm.
In fact, it's the Flesh and Blood Show from 1972.
Oh,
I like it. It's by director Pete Walker, who also did a lot of kind of like sexploitation films, but also moved into horror as well. But the writer is Alfred Shaughnessy, who wrote like a third of the episodes of Upstairs Downstairs, which was sort of like the Downton Abbey of the 70s. It takes place it's playing on Kino Now, which is a subscription service, but Kino has a free service called Kino Cult, which is really fun. You can get it on the website or on Roku and things like that. It's got a bunch of commercials, but it's pretty good. Kino Cult, and so anyway, you have a group of young actors who are hired to put on a production in this old theater at the end of a pier that pretty much hadn't been used since the end of World War II, which of course this was 72, so it wasn't quite as long ago as it is now. But it was it had been the scene of there used to be some Shakespearean things going on there and things like this. But basically, the young actors start getting picked off, as it were. It's a mystery. It's got gore. It's not quite a Here Come the Boobies movie, but there's ample bits of nudity. There's even some full frontal male nudity. Speaking of full frontal male nudity,
Heyo.
so
Hey.
hey Zach, so the originally had a final sequence that was in 3D. I don't think it was the final sequence. Looking at the movie, it's probably the second to last sequence that was in 3D, would be my guess, but you don't need that. But it's the Flesh and Blood Show, 1972, from on Kino Now and Kino Cult. And speaking of full frontal male nudity, I'll pass this to Zach.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Yeah, I apologize that I asked you guys to do a video call for this one, and I didn't put any pants on. So, or is that intentional? Ooh, I don't know. Anyways, so my first recommendation, I want to dedicate this one to someone special out there. Someone just special someone. I don't want to name names. Mostly because that way, if she breaks up with me next week, I can have plausible deniability and say I was referring to someone else. But this someone has been on the road for the past week or so we haven't seen each other. But I'm always reminded of a song when you're away from someone and you're thinking of them. Do you guys remember a little movie called An American Tail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys remember that one? There's a great song on there. Somewhere out there, there's a verse there that goes, "And even though I know how very far apart we are, it helps to think we might be wishing on the same bright star." So it's probably a good thing we weren't wishing on the same star this past week because there was a comet passing by. That's right. I'm not going to recommend American Tail. No, my friends. I'm going to recommend the classic 1984 film Night of the Comet. I know it's one of Bill's favorites. If you're not familiar with this film, it is a wonderful / terrible 80s romp. It is a film. A comet passes the Earth and turns a bunch of people into dust and a bunch of other people into mutants. And it's about a couple of Valley girls that have to contend with them. And it's got Chakotay from Star Trek Voyager. So it's a lot of fun. It's a very silly movie. It's pure 80s camp, but if you like some high sci-fi horror comedies, you'll probably enjoy this one. And Night of the Comet is passing through on the Roku channel, Tubi, Canopy, and Pluto TV. So yeah, check it out. It's silly, it's fun. And speaking of things that are silly and fun, I'm going to pass this over to Bill for his next recommendation.
And I second. Night of the Comet is one of the most 80s of 80s movies.
I was about to say that. Like, it's so quintessentially 80s.
It just bleeds 80s. And it has Mary Warrenoff in it.
Oh, yes.
And
yeah, I failed to mention that.
Any movie that has Mary Warrenoff in it has something that movies without Mary Warrenoff don't have, which is Mary Warrenoff.
Mary Warrenoff, yeah.
I think we can all agree on that. She's awesome. She's the best. So my second movie. Okay, so you took my advice. You ran out. You watched Manster. You couldn't believe where has this been all your life. So you watched it again and probably a third time. It's a short movie, so you could you're not even going to fill up the night. But now it's maybe time for something different, a palate cleanser, if you will. And I love giant monster movies. They're great, even when they're not particularly well done. It's cool, but you do get tired of seeing the same old Japanese architecture ruined every time. It's like let's share the wealth a little bit. So how about a movie destroying Copenhagen? Yeah, that's pretty cool. Take that, Little Mermaid. It's 1961's Reptilicus, directed
Ooh.
by the great Sidney Pink, who doesn't get enough attention. This is like he's one of the fathers of 3D. He worked with Arch Obler to make the truly terrible Buona Devil, coming up with a whole new technique for making 3D movies that sort of gave the 3D effect and definitely gave you a migraine that would last for weeks. He also discovered, this is crazy, but sort of discovered Robert De Niro, or was it maybe it was Dustin Hoffman? I don't know. One of those guys found him somewhere, cast him in a movie. Next thing you know, he's a hit. But he turned down the chance to produce Fistful of Dollars. I'm sure he's beating himself over that forever. But he's a pretty cool guy. He wrote an interesting book on making low-budget movies, produced a lot of them. Okay, Reptilicus is terrible, but it's compellingly terrible. The monster is a big hand puppet, kind of a giant dragon, like a Chinese dragon sort of thing. He just sort of flops around and bumps into things and they fall over. But it's so cool watching it happen in Denmark, of all places. And apparently they were so thrilled to be having a Godzilla movie made in Denmark that they just like sent in the army. They let him borrow the Denmark army, which, I mean, what have they ever won? And they don't do too well against Reptilicus either. But this movie, oh my God, it's just it's so bad. It's just so bad. But amazingly bad. And the amazing thing is, if you get the unrated version, it's worse because there's huge chunks of this incredibly unfunny comedian who I guess was a big hit in Denmark. And his performance is so over the top, it makes you long for the subtle thespian qualities of Jerry Lewis. It's just unbelievable. And sometimes he starts singing and you're like, can this get any worse? Yes, it can. The special effects are unbelievable. So there's a scene where Reptilicus destroys a farm and eats the farmer. We actually see the farmer go into his mouth and disappear. And there's a lot of ways you could film something like that. But one of the ways that no one, I think, has ever tried to do is to just take a bunch of Polaroids of a guy just sort of going, waving his arms and legs around, and then very carefully with a pair of scissors, cutting them out. So you've got a bunch of little tiny cutouts of this guy, numbered on the back so you get them in the right order, and then you just place them inside the hand puppet's mouth one at a time and take a picture. And when it all comes together, it magically looks like the worst piece of shit special effect you've ever seen in your life. It is, you'll piss yourself. You will just rewind it over and over and over again. This movie, the monkeys got a hold of this thing and they kept putting bits of it into their TV show because it's just so random and crazy. And yeah. And then you go on YouTube, it's like, are there things I didn't know about? It's like, yeah, here's the deleted scenes where he flew. He flew. He's got smaller wings than Submariner, and he flew. And yes, he did. But I guess they decided at some point, it's like Americans will buy a lot of shit, but they won't buy this. So they took out all the flying scenes. And needless to say, it's on Tubi. That's Reptilicus, 1961. It's the best. And speaking of the best, I send this to Renee.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. That is, I'm very excited. I'm gonna watch that. So, I wouldn't leave you hanging on this upcoming Valentine's Day. So I wanted to bring you guys something to celebrate, and that is My Bloody Valentine. You can watch it on HBO Max. It's from 1981. So 20 years ago, there was a disaster, a mining disaster. Just so happened to be on Valentine's Day. And there's a legend that if anybody celebrates Valentine's Day again, they will be murdered. And sure enough, these damn rowdy teenagers, they just have to break the rules and do their own thing. And they just decided, well, it's time. We're going to have a Valentine's Day party, and all hell breaks loose. So, yeah, this movie is called My Bloody Valentine, and it's a good old slasher, and it's got some fun little kills in it.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's pretty fun. Now, I will tell you, there was a remake in 2009. Yeah, it wasn't bad. It was, it has a very strong 2000s vibe.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I was watching this, it made me think of Halloween H2O that we had recently talked about. And it just so happens that the director of this movie, of the 2009 version, was an editor on Halloween H2O. So there's that. They did make some slight changes to the story, which I think makes it, kind of an interesting watch. It has Jensen Ackles in it, which I know some people are a fan of him. But the number one reason to watch My Bloody Valentine from 2009, Tom Atkins.
Yay!
Oh, yay. Yeah.
I mean, right? And he plays a cop because, of course, that's what Tom Atkins does. So, yeah, that's my suggestion. It is My Bloody Valentine.
You know what would have been great if the motivation of this guy was because he grew up in the 60s and on Valentine's Day in school we would actually have to handwrite Valentines to everybody in the classroom, and there was always that one kid who didn't get any. And that's why they don't do it anymore, because it was really kind of brutal. It was really like Lord of the Flies, the way everyone just
Oh,
turned on this kid. Remember that, Paul?
Oh no, I do. I received Valentine's. I did.
Sure you did. Sure you did.
Your mom doesn't count, Paul.
Hang on, it said you choose me.
oh no.
Yeah.
If you play it in slow motion, you can see the exact moment when his heart breaks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true. We would also give off those horrible little chalk candies, which may be the worst candies ever.
You mean the absolutely delicious little chalk candies?
Okay.
Those are delicious.
Oh, yum.
Yeah.
I also like Necco wafers, which are
Well,
made by the same
that's
company.
because you're a demon.
Yeah, that's true.
So Paul thought he was getting Valentine's when really all the kids were giving away their shitty candy to him because he was the only one who would eat it. It's like, oh, I'm getting Valentine's.
Oh, they must love me.
Tums in my box. I was like, these Tums are great.
Speaking of people who like candy, speaking of people who like shitty chalk candy,
Yeah.
I want to pass this over to Paul.
Why? Thank you, Renee. So my first, I'm going to tell you my theme, and I bet you Bill can guess what my next movie is. So my theme, based on the first one, was British early 70s theater, Shakespeare,
Oh, I know already.
murders,
Yeah.
and the word blood in the title. Bill, what am I recommending?
Does it have Vincent Price?
Yes, it does.
Well,
It's Theater of Blood from
yeah.
1973, starring Vincent Price, Diana Riggs, Ian Hedry, and even it's just really fun. It is on Tubi, Redbox, Pluto TV, Indie Flicks, and FlexFling. It is one of my favorites. It's sort of a part of a whole subgenre of horror movies, where horror comedies where people are killed in thematic ways. In this one, Vincent Price plays a hammy actor. I know it's a stretch for him, who, after being turned down by the Theater Circle Award, he's a Shakespearean actor. He supposedly kills himself, but does he? Not really, because shortly thereafter, the theater critics are starting to be killed off in manners related to the Shakespearean plays in which they had criticized that he was in. It is gory, it is funny, it is creative, it is just a hoot. It is all around great time. Yeah,
Hey, Paul,
it is one of my favorites.
What's your favorite kill, and why is it Titus Andronicus?
Yes. I don't want to give any spoilers.
I know.
But yes, in fact, when I was a kid, that's how I was like, that's how I even knew that Titus Andronicus was a thing.
Yeah.
So, it's educational. It is, and this film also references Othello, but this one at least doesn't have blackface. The other one did have a Othello scene that did have blackface, but is theatrical Shakespearean blackface. So,
Yeah,
anyway,
I know.
but Theater of Blood, just a hoot. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Again, on Tubi, Redbox, Pluto TV, IndieFlix, and FlexFling. And speaking of hammy actors, I pass this to Zach.
Oh, thank you so much. So, hey, you guys, I mentioned Night of the Comet. Do you guys remember when comets were fun? Do you remember when people got excited, formed cults, committed mass suicide around them because they thought that they were going to go up into the comet and go off into the cosmos? You guys remember that?
Oh, I thought you said.
Specifically web developers that did that.
I thought you said
web
comics.
developers.
Comics. I was like, yeah. What's wrong with anything that you're saying?
Comics too.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
yeah, comics too.
Comics
Well,
is crazy. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
Well, there was once upon a time comets were very fun because people I don't know, thought, they formed cults around them. And my second recommendation, maybe comets would be fun again if they did whisk some people away, and the rest of us would be left over on Earth. That's my really, really horrible segue into my second recommendation. I didn't have a whole lot going on. Yeah, sorry, I put all my energy into the first one. Okay, so anyways, let's move on. My second recommendation, actually, a show I'm really surprised I have not recommended before because this is a show that I love, and for some reason it's a show that I think got really overlooked, like early or like mid 2010s prestige TV. For some reason, this is just a show that no one talks about, as far as I can tell. The name of the show is The Leftovers. The premise of the show is based on a book. The premise is that at one point, 2% of the Earth's population just up and disappeared. And the show is set, or it starts several years later when the people who are left are kind of still contending with this. They don't know why people disappeared. They don't know where they went. Obviously, there are a bunch of thoughts, schools of thought that have grown up around it. And speaking of cults, there's a very nefarious cult that is kind of dedicated to the aftermath of all these people disappearing. This show is amazing. I really cannot stress, again, I don't know why this show doesn't get talked about more. Fantastically written, fantastic cast. Let me just read some of the people who show up in the first season. Justin Theroux, if you're a fan of him, Christopher Eccleston, aka the best new era Doctor Who. You got Carrie Coon, Ann Dowd, and to round it out, you got Scott Glenn. Some of those names you may not recognize, but you probably recognize the actors when they show up. Just really phenomenal show. It's 3 seasons, and they tie it up very neatly in the end. Or you could argue that they don't tie it up at all. But I really like the way they ended it. I just love it so much. So The Leftovers, it's on HBO Max. Check it out, and you can be one of the few people who have actually watched this show and know that it exists. And I guess is that it? Is that our show for the week?
I think so. Yeah.
Anybody want to sing us out?
I had one prepared, but Zach had mentioned somewhere out there, so I feel like
I mean, I can do a full rendition if you want to.
Oh. I don't think I'm not sure anyone said that in so many words.
Yeah, but you were all thinking it. Okay, I know you guys well enough to know what you're thinking.
Yeah, go for it.
No, Paul, you can take it away. Paul, you can take it away. I don't want to stop you from.
It was your song.
I don't have any tissues with me. It's gonna make me cry.
Okay.
Oh.
So I don't even know.
Oh, I'm crying already.
I don't even know how it goes.
Let's sing it together, okay?
All right.
Okay.
No.
One,
okay. Are we gonna
two,
sing it
three.
together? Okay.
Somewhere
Oh my God.
out there
beneath the pale moonlight, somebody told me the world got me. I in the shed.
This is not row, row, row your boat. You're supposed to be singing the same words at the same time.
For the weekend of February 10th, Bill recommended The Manster, available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Paramount Plus, and Reptilicus, available on the Roku channel, Tubi, and Hoopla. Paul recommended The Flesh and Blood Show, available on Kino Cult and Kino Now, and Theater of Blood, available on Tubi, Pluto TV, and Redbox. Zachary recommended Night of the Comet, available on Tubi, Canopy, Pluto TV, and the Roku channel. And The Leftovers, available on HBO Max. I recommended Chompy and the Girls, available on Roku, Hoopla, and Tubi. And My Bloody Valentine, available on HBO Max. All right. I suppose everybody's ready.
I'm ready. Zach's just gonna stay mute till he pops in.
He just comes bursting in there like Rip Taylor, just throwing confetti and which is how I'd like to start every classroom. I just like as soon as the bell rings, just da 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 da, just throwing stuff around. But they passed that "Don't Say Rip Taylor" law, so no more of that.
Nah!